Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today is the 7th of April 2021. Alright, let's get into it everyone. So yesterday I mentioned on the Refuel that Coinbase's earnings, Q1 earnings were going to drop, and they certainly did. So let's walk through this. So as I said, this is the earnings and outlook kind of report for Q1 of this year. So January, February, and March. And Coinbase had $1.8 billion worth of revenue in just Q1 of this year, which I'm pretty sure is a record quarter here. Net income of $730 to $800 million, 56 million verified users, which is 13 million more than last quarter, and 6.1 million monthly transacting users, which is plus 3.3 million from last quarter. So doubling their kind of monthly transacting users here. Growth over the last quarter in revenue was 200%, net income 300%, and traded volume 272% here. So obviously a lot of growth here for Coinbase, and to be expected for sure. I don't think we could see what was happening in the crypto markets right now and not think that Coinbase had such spectacular growth here. I'm actually wondering at this point, how much growth did Binance have if Coinbase had this much? Because Binance obviously services not just those in kind of the Western countries with Binance US, but they also service a lot of the Asian countries, the European countries, and there's just people double dipping because you can't get a lot of the coins that you can on Binance on Coinbase. So I would imagine that Binance's kind of growth is just as spectacular as this as well, and it's definitely new investors coming in, maybe returning investors from the 2017 boom. Definitely some spectacular growth there, and you can see this chart here that illustrates it quite well in terms of the growth from last quarter. Just absolutely insane. And, I'm going to be curious to see if this growth keeps up, right, through the next kind of quarter, through Q2. But obviously Coinbase is listing on the stock exchange in about a week from now. So getting these kind of quarterly report out before the listing is very smart, because if you actually I saw just before, look at kind of the market cap, that Coinbase is trading. I think it's over $100 billion right now. But there was a financial institute, I can't remember which one said this, but they basically upped their target of Coinbase's share price to over $400 from $200, something like that. So basically, people are expecting Coinbase to open at a $200+ billion market cap, which is absolutely insane. That's going to capture a lot of headlines. It's going to become one of the most valuable companies in the world, basically overnight, right? One of the most valuable public companies, that is, which is going to bring a ton of attention into this space. And as I said on yesterday's Refuel, it's going to legitimize this space a lot as well, I think, because you're going to have so many people who, might think that it was super risky to invest in Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of the other kind of crypto assets, now seeing, well, I can invest in Coinbase, which is obviously fully regulated on a regulated kind of platform, and I can invest in that safely with kind of a retirement account or or any kind of other brokerage account that people have, sort of thing. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense there as well. A bit more kind of information here, I guess, from Larry is, what did he say here? He added something here where projecting revenue forward by assuming constant volume growth makes no sense. Coinbase's volume is incredibly cyclical, and if markets slow down a bit, it's totally possible we even see a decline. Just watch the volume. And I totally agree with that for sure. I mean, you can see here that usually Q1, Q2 is pretty good, but then you go into Q3 and Q4 and the volumes kind of taper off there, as you can see. But it is volatile. I mean, last year it was different, right? Last year, you had in 2019, you had May, June, and July being the standout months, whereas in 2020, you had March, May, and August being the standout months here. Now, obviously, March was a lot of volume because of the crash, I guess. It wasn't actually, buy volume, it was majority sell volume. And then, in August, obviously, we had the DeFi run, of course, and that, and an ETH and Bitcoin run as well, which attributed a lot to that. So, yeah, definitely not a constant kind of thing. It's not like we're going to be seeing Coinbase break kind of record volumes every month, sort of thing. If the market's quiet, then Coinbase's volumes are quiet. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's pretty easy to kind of draw that conclusion. But anyway, this is going to be huge. I can't wait to see kind of all the headlines around this, and kind of how crazy the traditional markets go over Coinbase and how much they bid it up, because this growth is seriously insane. There are not many companies that post this kind of growth, and obviously it's because the rest of the crypto market's growing, but maybe we have another few months left of this craziness in us, and yeah, it's going to be pretty insane to see how kind of like Coinbase goes here. So the Ethereum Cat Herders put out their latest update here, number 41, going over a bunch of different things. So I think the highlight of this update was that there's an updated roadmap for Stateless Ethereum. So for those who don't know, Stateless Ethereum is an initiative that's being undertaken as part of the ETH2 roadmap to essentially make it so that we can fix the state bloat problem of Ethereum, where Ethereum becomes a stateless system where where kind of like people only retain the state that they care about, sort of thing. So that is in heavy research and kind of like, I guess, early development at this stage. But yeah, a bunch of other updates here. And for those who don't know what the Ethereum Cat Herders updates are, they're basically a way to keep on top of all the ETH1 and ETH2 stuff that's going on at the protocol level. It's very comprehensive. It gives you links to basically everything you need. It's the best kind of like overview of the ETH1 and ETH2 systems that I've come across. So definitely go check that out. But yeah, a lot here. I mean, so much. And some of it's technical, some of it's not. But if you want to keep up with everything that's happening within the Ethereum ecosystem, then this is the place to do it, definitely. So yeah, go check it out if you haven't already. I'm just kind of scrolling down to, I can't remember where I saw it, where the stateless kind of like roadmap. I think it's like the first thing here. Yeah, there's a bunch of information here around that. That's the most interesting thing, I think, right now. Outside of like the merger, sharding, 1559, stuff like that, I think Stateless Ethereum is the most interesting thing, which you can kind of see the updated roadmap here, sort of thing. So definitely go check that out if you haven't already. Speaking of protocol kind of related updates here, protolambda tweeted out that the Alpha 3 ETH2 kind of spec release for the first upgrade coming to ETH2, or the first hard fork called Altair, was kind of released today, and there's new merge and sharding R&D specs now as well. So yeah, this is obviously very kind of technical, very protocol level stuff. Most of us are not going to be kind of looking deep into this, but it just shows that there's a lot of progress being made, on ETH2 right now. Like the Altair upgrade, I think is still scheduled for mid this year. And the merge is obviously taking like a pretty good priority now, or pretty high priority now, where we could expect to see it by the end of this year if they do the minimum viable merge path. And sharding is also kind of top of mind for a lot of kind of researchers and developers here. So great to see that and great to see progress coming out of there. But as I said, I think that this and a lot of the similar stuff is covered in like this Ethereum Cat Herders update as well. So definitely go check both of these things out if you're interested in learning more. So Gnosis has released this new product called the Gnosis Auction platform. Basically, it's a new platform for fair, transparent, and decentralized token price discovery on Ethereum. What it is essentially aiming to do is basically be a platform for fair token launches, from kind of like what my reading is here. They have tried to do this before with platforms like Mesa, and if you remember, the couple of high-profile launches happened on Mesa, such as MStable and dHedge, in terms of like token kind of sales there. A lot of people use balances, kind of like LBP platform now. But what this platform tries to do is basically as they describe here, Gnosis Auction facilitates batching a much larger set of orders, which caters specifically to the initial DEX offering use case, as well as other large auctions such as token buybacks or protocols, collateral auctions. Now, this is supposed to be I guess like done in such a way where people can't like front run people, or whales can't just buy up everything during these sales. It's supposed to make it like very fair for people to be able to participate, and also make it transparent, and also make it a really great price discovery mechanism as well. So yeah, and I saw a bunch of people talking about this, and I think there's kind of like wide agreement that this is the best and fairest way to do a token launch. But the Mesa platform had a bunch of issues, I think, with it, where it was kind of buggy, bit slow. Like I remember back, like I was kind of like staying up and watching the MStable sale at the time, and I remember there was like a kind of like thing where they had to find the solver, and it delayed the sale by a couple of hours or something like that. So there were some kind of hiccups with that. But with the Gnosis Auction here, they seem to have like, I guess, rebuilt it, and come out with like a new platform here, where they've come up with a kind of like more innovative and new way to do this. So yeah, I mean, this kind of release post is quite lengthy, and it'll explain it in much more detail, and it's live on the Ethereum mainnet now, and XDAI, a sidechain too. So yeah, you can check it out on both of those platforms. So I think some of the most exciting news to come out of the last 24 hours is that dYdX has released their layer 2 perpetuals exchange to the public. So no more wait lists, no more kind of, I guess, caps on how much you can deposit or how much funds you can deposit into the layer 2. It's now live for everyone, and you can put in as much money as you want, which is awesome because they only kind of launched the alpha in like February, right? It's only been a couple of months, and they're already basically at the point where they've launched a public mainnet now, live layer 2 using StarkWare's technology on Ethereum. I know it's become a bit of a meme for me, myself, and a lot of other people to say things like, layer 2 is coming, it's coming, just wait. I mean, and I've been trying to be very clear that layer 2 is not only coming, it is definitely here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. We have a bunch of different kind of like isolated things going on, right? That definitely harness the power of layer 2, like Loopring, like dYdX, like Diversify, like some kind of other projects out there, like Synthetics on Optimism, right? And things like that. But as I said, it's not evenly distributed yet. Connex is in its early stages of building bridges between these layer 2s, same with Hot Protocol and stuff like that, but still very, very early stages. So it's not like the technology isn't real and that it's not live. There's a lot of stuff on testnet as well. It's just that we need to give it time to kind of permeate throughout the ecosystem. We need to give it time to build network effects, and we need to give it time for people to kind of get used to this kind of layer 2 world, I think, at the end of the day. So from that perspective, layer 2 is here. It's just, it's just going to take a little bit of time to get there. And, I think there's another update actually here that I wanted to talk about from Gods Unchained, where they put out, I guess, like a blog post saying that people will be getting early access to Immutable X, their decentralized kind of like NFT exchange here. And they've put a post here explaining like, here's, everything that we all need to know to prepare ourselves for the future of NFT trading. So if you've got Gods Unchained cards, which I'm sure a lot of you do, I mean, I do, I bought them a long time ago, you'll be able to kind of trade them on this kind of exchange here very, very soon. I mean, I think their release is basically imminent at this point. As I mentioned previously, they are using StarkWare's technology as well for this exchange, and that's live in a very public kind of mainnet way with dYdX here. So, I think this is going to be live. If I had to kind of give a guess, maybe within the next couple of weeks, sort of thing. It's definitely not very far away at all, which is really, really bullish, and I'm really, really looking forward to that for sure. But just on the kind of layer 2 case here as well, and kind of, I guess some of you might know why it takes so long to get these things right. I guess like the top reason is that a lot of these teams, a lot of this tech is very new and very novel, and you don't want to launch something and then somehow people lose money on it, right? Because not only would that shatter confidence in layer 2s in general, and shatter and lead to like really bad narratives as well, but it would mean that you basically, as a team or as like a project building this sort of stuff, you start out on a really kind of like crappy foot, right? Where you've essentially launched something and then it's just broken from day one, right? And we've seen that play out, like where kind of like with the Project Fae protocol that everyone's been talking about lately, where they launched and obviously the protocol is not working as it is working as intended, but it's not working the way that people thought it would work, right? Or people thought that, it should work, whereas like Fae is basically at its peg and things like that, and people can kind of withdraw their money and stuff. So, if you've seen what's happened with that and how much kind of like, I guess, drama that's caused and how much hate is being directed towards the project, no project wants to go through that. And the easiest way to avoid that is simply not launch something until it's kind of like ready, right? And I'm not saying that the Fae protocol team did this or anything like that. I'm just using that as an example. But at the end of the day, I've been a part of many different kind of project launches, whether as an observer or as like a directly involved. And I can tell you that the number one thing, that I found in common across like all different types of teams is that they really, really care about security. They really care about user funds. They really don't want to launch a product that can put user funds at risk. And if they have to wait to launch it, then so be it. And that's why you see, especially in the layer 2 space, things are just slower. And that's why, you've seen things like Optimism's public mainnet get delayed. They do not want to release something that they feel is either insecure, is not ready, is going to lead to a poor user experience, because that's just not good for anyone at the end of the day. And I think, and I've said this before, yes, there's delays for a lot of different things, but like the delays are forgotten about at the end of the day. I mean, if you really think about it, ETH2, the beacon chain itself, took forever to launch from when people thought it would launch. And it's been live now, and everyone's kind of like, okay, what's next now, right? Like when merge, like people just move on to the next thing. It's like people get over the fact that there was all these delays. No one even cares about that or remembers that anymore. People are like, well, ETH2 is live. The proof of stake chain is live, right? At least the first phase of it, right? The beacon chain. It's working. It's doing what it should be doing. And the reason it's doing what it should be doing and it's working so perfectly is because of all those kind of like delays to get the testing done, right? All that kind of time to make sure everything was fine. So from that point of view, I think, a delayed project is not a bad thing. I think it's a very, very healthy thing. And I applaud projects that kind of like do that instead of just rushing to launch due to, I guess like either it be ecosystem expectations or internal deadlines that they don't want to kind of skip out on. Yeah, I just don't see a problem there. I know short term it sucks, but in the long term it's gonna be better if more teams do this. So yeah, very excited to see Immutable X go live. Anyway, as I said, I expect it any day now. I'm sure they've been working very, very hard on it. They've been teasing it for quite a while. And as I've said before, it's a decentralized exchange for NFTs, which is something that doesn't... a layer 2 decentralized exchange for NFTs, which is a use case that is absolutely massive. So if they can get this right, if this can work, I think this is going to change the game for NFTs on Ethereum. So Set Protocol announced today that they're going to be deprecating V1 of the robo sets on the platform. Now, this is kind of like an end of an era, I think, for Set Protocol. I was involved heavily with all of this kind of like building out these robo sets and social sets and stuff like that when I worked at Set as kind of like full-time marketing. But as the ecosystem has evolved over time and as kind of like gas fees have gotten higher, since kind of like the robo sets were a thing, and then Set V2 was released, it's basically come to the point now where it's not worth it to keep these kind of, I guess, like sets going, essentially. And that's what they kind of describe in the blog post here on Medium. And they basically kind of like describe the history. And like these robosets have been out since like 2019. And, it's actually kind of nostalgic when I look at this sort of stuff because I was involved in this since mid 2019. And I'm just remembering back to like the gas fees back then, right? Like, 1 Gwei up to, 10 Gwei sort of thing, gas fees. And it was just like nothing. Like no one cared, right? Everyone would just pay gas fees and it'd be fine, right? But that's not the case today. And also the infrastructure and kind of like the smart contracts that these sets used were based on the V1 of the protocol, which was actually, based on kind of like old code that hadn't been updated in a while because it was from like 2019, and it hadn't been optimized for the kind of, I guess, like high gas fees on Ethereum. So it was actually very expensive to kind of rebalance things, and and now the gas fees being expensive in general makes it expensive for market makers to participate in things like rebalances and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why kind of like V1's being deprecated here. If you do have these robos kind of like sets in V1, there's a guide here on how to redeem it and basically how to sell out of it, sort of thing. I know that for some users it's painful because the fees are quite high on selling these sorts of things. It can cost sometimes like a few $100s to do this, which is unfortunate. But yeah, if you want to kind of get out of this position, this is how you do it, because these sets will no longer be rebalanced into the future. But the positive thing is that the Set V2 infrastructure has been built up from the ground up to be very gas efficient, to avoid all of the problems that kind of like reared their head with V1. And like I'm personally extremely bullish on what V2 is doing. Obviously I have a bias here as I'm still an advisor to Set, but I think it's just like a better path forward. And this is the kind of stuff where it's like short-term pain for long-term gain sort of thing. So I guess like kudos to I guess like the Set team for pulling the plug here. I know it wasn't easy for them. Like I've been following kind of the conversations. Definitely wasn't an easy decision to make, but it was one that had to be done. So yeah, if you've got any old sets, definitely go check out this post. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. So NFTX has launched their new interface, which allows people to create, mint, and trade NFT-backed tokens here. So you can go to app.nftx.org here, and you can kind of see there's a new interface. I'm not going to connect my wallet here, but basically they've kind of refreshed the UI. For those who have used NFTX in the past, you'll see kind of like how this differs from the old UI here. But yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite projects in the space still. And for those who don't know what this is, and actually disclaiming how I own some NFTX tokens, of course, but basically what this is, it's a way to create like indexes of different NFTs and give them liquidity. So essentially the most popular one I think is the punk index, where basically all of the quote unquote floor punks, or like the least rare punks, I've kind of put into this index. And you can trade this, and it acts as like a kind of like benchmark for what the floor is on CryptoPunks. So you could speculate on CryptoPunks by just buying and selling this kind of index. Now, this is just like I guess like one of the first apps you can use NFTX for. There's obviously other NFTs you can put into this, and anyone can kind of mint their baskets and create these indexes here and stuff like that. So, and like with this new interface, it's even easier to do. So yeah, if you're interested in doing that sort of stuff, definitely go check this out. But I think this is really, really cool. I really think that this is a sorely needed kind of thing. I think that they're working very hard right now on like upgrading the protocol as well, not just the UI. I think there's like a V2 coming at some point as well. So I'm definitely excited for that. But yeah, and I'm curious to see kind of like how this lends itself to the Immutable X platform as well. Will we see NFT indexes trading, on Immutable X's platform? We will see. So I put out this poll today, and I left this for last year because I think I'm going to be talking about this for a few minutes here. But I put out this poll where I asked, do you care about decentralization? And as you can see here, the overwhelming kind of response was yes. There's about 83% was yes, about 5% was no, 6% was indifferent, and 6% was show results. So I was surprised by this, if I'm being honest. And obviously this poll isn't going to be representative of the entire space. I have a very kind of like Ethereum-based following. Most of my followers are obviously interested in Ethereum. And if you're interested in Ethereum, you obviously care about decentralization. But, and I wrote about this in the Daily Gwei newsletter today, I actually think this question is like very, very simple. It doesn't have enough nuance around it. Because when you say the word decentralization, and when you actually say to people, okay, is this thing decentralized, or is this thing, people have their own definitions for it. It is not a strictly defined term. It is not something that you can just say, okay, well, this is decentralized and this isn't, or like people will say, this is decentralized, but really it isn't, and sort of thing. And there's a piece by Balaji called Quantifying Decentralization, and it kind of breaks down like what kind of like things you have to measure to get to something that's decentralized. So, the number of nodes in the network that are validating the kind of like network and can validate the network, how concentrated the mining or staking is in terms of like pooling and stuff like that. How decentralized is the core development? Is there multiple teams working on the clients, right? How decentralized is the exchange infrastructure and just general infrastructure in general. So all of this sort of stuff culminates into kind of like measuring and, as Balaji puts it, quantifying this decentralization. Now, that nuance is completely lost here. So I think with this poll, a lot of people do care about decentralization, but there might be people who think that the things that they care about, or like the decentralization that they care about, is a platform that's not actually decentralized at the end of the day. So and it's hard to tell because obviously this is just a poll, and I had a bunch of replies here as well that I was kind of reading through, and like I actually liked the replies here, and I like that some people said they like money more. So they care about decentralization, but they like money more than decentralization, which, I expect. This person says here, yes, but yes, I care about decentralization, but I still buy BNB if it goes up, for example. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't blame people for doing this. Just because something is not decentralized doesn't mean you can't speculate on it at the end of the day. But I think the fundamental kind of, I guess, like question here that I was trying to answer is that, yes, you can make money on these things, but like outside of the money making stuff, what do you actually care about? Do you care about decentralization? And I think a lot of people do, but I do think a lot of people sometimes mistake certain platforms for being decentralized when they aren't. Not just platforms and like other blockchains, but also kind of like apps as well. Because if we really kind of look at it, there's a lot of apps on Ethereum today within the DeFi ecosystem that are definitely not decentralized because they still have admin keys, which is a feature for those apps because they're early stage, they want to be able to upgrade the protocol, and that's fine. Like I don't have an issue with that. But you might get a lot of people saying, well, this protocol is decentralized because it's on Ethereum. It's like, well, okay, that I can get why people say that, but that is just like, if the base layer is decentralized but the app isn't decentralized itself, well then it's not decentralized just because it's on Ethereum. It could be on any other base layer, but as long as there was admin keys that controlled it, it's not decentralized, right? So the point is here is that like the base layer, in this case Ethereum being decentralized is critical because it works the other way too. If your base layer is centralized, but the apps, maybe on top of it are decentralized and don't have like admin keys or whatever, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you're still at the mercy of the centralized base layer. So that's why the base layer being decentralized is the most important thing. And that's why I don't mind DeFi apps being kind of centralized and then progressing to being decentralized over time, because it makes a lot of sense. And it's actually easier to do that for different DeFi apps and apps in general than it is to do that for an entire platform. So, and that's why I'm unconvinced that a lot of these other platforms that claim that they're going to be able to decentralize over time, like all these other blockchains, I just don't think that's going to happen. I've seen that kind of claimed for many years in this space, and it's just never materialized as people kind of thought it would, especially in systems that are based on distributed proof of stake or DPoS. They devolve into cartels very quickly. And then the cartels don't want to give up their power. And essentially it's just a centralized system at the end of the day. So yeah, maybe I'll put out some more follow-up polls to this. I don't know if Twitter polls is the kind of best thing to do here. I think just simply educating people more about what decentralization is, why Ethereum is not sacrificing decentralization. Even though it's more expensive to use Ethereum, people still don't want the community at large doesn't want to sacrifice it to achieve kind of like cheaper fees and scale or whatever. But, and I guess like the last thing I wanted to talk about here, and I was thinking really kind of deeply about this, because I actually saw a comment here from someone. There was, I don't know where it is now. I can't remember if it was a comment here or somewhere else, but essentially people can say they don't care about decentralization until they do. Because when you really think about it, right, people are like, well, this thing has run centralized for quite a while. It's fine. Like nothing's ever going to go bad with it. And then you kind of look at history and like, that's never been the case. Like even the biggest banks in the world in the US, right, were doing kind of shitty things leading up to 2008. And the only reason why some of them survived was because they got bailouts from the governments. The government isn't going to bail out any of these blockchains, right? If something goes wrong with them, no one's coming to bail them out. Like, and if it's centralized, then the only person bailing it out is kind of like the people running this system. But if they're out of money and there's something that requires money to kind of bail it out, then I don't know. I just see that kind of just blowing up in people's faces. So at the end of the day, we are building these systems to get away from centralization as much as possible. And that's why I personally always fight back against these other platforms. And I get that people want to use them because the fees are cheaper and all that sort of stuff. And that's fine. I don't blame people for doing that. But don't call it decentralized. Understand that what you're using is at risk of centralized control. And also understand that the whole point of this ecosystem is to decentralize as much as we can. So, and I think a lot of people do, and I think everyone kind of watching and listening to this definitely understands this. But, and this is why I keep doing this. This is why I keep doing more education around this, is because I want people to understand this. And I think during a bull market, it's easy for people to lose their heads and not really care about this sort of stuff, and that's fine. People want to make money, and I don't blame people for that, right? Everyone wants to make money. I would be lying if I said that I didn't want to make money either. But, at some point, this stuff kind of like means more to a lot of people than money. For me and a lot of people that I kind of know in the ecosystem, we care a lot more about kind of like seeing this technology succeed in the way that we want it to. And the way that we want it to succeed is it being, as decentralized and as secure as possible. So for me, I'll keep supporting Ethereum as much as I can. I'll keep supporting scaling via layer 2 because it's the only way to scale a system and retain decentralization. But that's not to say some of these other platforms won't get traction. Like personally, I'm, looking at some of these other platforms and being like, okay, well, what they're doing here is pretty cool, and what they're doing there is pretty cool. Not the very centralized ones. Like I obviously have zero interest in following what's happening on BSC. There are other platforms. I'm not going to name any right now, but there are other platforms that I can see kind of like maybe carving out value over the long term. But obviously, most of my focus is still on Ethereum here. Ethereum is where all the excitement's happening anyway. So if I want to keep entertained, I just stay in the Ethereum ecosystem. But at the end of the day, Ethereum is the only platform, and I believe will be the only platform that appeals to everything that I want to see in these platforms and to my deeply held beliefs and kind of ideologies. And I'll freely admit that it's an ideological thing, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think that, not everyone is like that, and which is fine. But I think being honest about it and being honest about what, you care and don't care about is better than just lying and saying, yeah, I care about decentralization when really, you kind of don't. Yeah, because like honesty, I think is kind of everything in this space. And, I'm glad to see actually a lot of people being honest, right? A lot of people just straight up say, I care about money more than I care about decentralization. I'm fine with that. You just straight up tell me and I'm fine with it. What I don't like is when people kind of lie, right? And, when people kind of mislead others by saying, they really care about decentralization, but they're just profiting off centralization at the end of the day. So I think, I think from that perspective, it's just like good to kind of like take stock here. And I think I've rambled on about that enough for today. And we're up at 30 minutes, so I think I'm going to end it there. So thank you everyone for listening and watching again. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.